Welcome to Analyzing the 1%. My name is Gilbert Gambucci. I am an Occupy Wall Street activist. I'm an international pianist by profession and psychosocial analyst. That is to say, we analyze the correlation between human individual pathology and social pathology, how they relate to one another, so that we can analyze with more clarity, more profundity, what needs to be analyzed, the problems in our society. And so, for example, today we at Occupy, we want to see the restoration of our Constitution of the United States because it has been usurped by the economically powerful people, the 1% as we call them. That's why we see our constitutional rights have been thrown in the garbage, literally, and we're demanding that back. And with difficulty, because economically powerful people are no joke. They don't want democracy. They are against the principles of our founding fathers. They are against the Constitution of the United States. This should be becoming more evident for people. It's a growing consciousness, this reality, you know. And what I would like to bring up today is if capitalism, the system of capitalism, is highly exploitative, then what do we replace it with? Okay, because clearly there's a difference between capitalism, which is an economic structure, and democracy, which is a political structure. And so it's kind of curious to me that people think that our only choices are democracy or socialism, Marxism, as though that's it, or anarchism, you know. But what about creating a scientific dialectic to make a third way, a new way of doing economics, you know, putting ethics and spirituality into the workplace? So, for example, in capitalism, we have, there's a positive aspect, the self-initiative. Then there's a negative aspect, which is the highly exploitative nature of the structure of capitalism. Or in socialism, there's a positive aspect, working for the common good. And then in practice, we see there's a negative aspect, which is a complete apathy among the people. So how do we unify the positive aspects? That is to say, self-initiative with working for the common good in order to create a third way, leaving aside the pathological elements that each system has and just taking the correct good elements, the beneficial elements, and working with that until you reach with a third way. And this is what I want to bring to us today, the third way. And we call this the trilogical cooperative model. Trilogical because we use in our considerations science, that is the science of the human being principally, philosophy of life, and spirituality. And so I would like to take a look today to show us this alternative that is something that is, we've hammered this out for 30 years. This is something that has been applied in practice. In fact, in the 80s, we had 18 different companies here in New York City working with the Trilogical company, cooperative enterprise, until we were attacked by the 1%, the economically powerful people. And we had these companies operating in Europe for 9 years. And now in Brazil, the past 15 years, Trilogical enterprises are a big success in Brazil. And that's why the Brazilian economy is growing. And I would like to show this to you today. Of course, the mainstream media, which is owned by the 1%, they don't want you to know this. That's why you don't know about it until right now. Okay, so let's take a look at the slides. Can we show the first slide there of the Trilogical enterprise, which is neither capitalist, you know, exploited by economically powerful people, nor socialist, which is an exploitation of the state with the same result, whereby we have a few people who benefit from the society and the people in general have relatively nothing. But we're talking about the dialectic between the positive elements of both, as I said, and our own conclusions, scientific conclusions, whereby, do you see there, trilogical, we bring science, philosophy, and spirituality into the workplace. Okay, so number one, let's take a look at the first slide here. This is the objective, how to work and receive income without being exploited and without exploiting others. This is the objective here. How do you achieve that? You know, in capitalism, nobody wants to work anymore because we know that you're working to make somebody else wealthy. It's the same thing in socialism. Nobody wants to work for the state. You know, we want to work for ourselves in benefit of our fellow man. Okay? So let's see now number 2. How this works in practice. These are the principles that we use in the trilogical enterprise. It's a direct profit distribution according to worker productivity, that is the quality of one's work, and not according to capital invested. Do you know, in capitalism, who makes money is those who invest in the companies. You know, the capitalists. Those who work get paid, I say, you know, we get thrown a few bananas, you know, they get a weekly wage, minimum salary, but the real wealth is being taken out through the capitalist. In the Trilogical Company, capital is treated as a loan. You know, you don't make money from capital. You make money according to your productivity. You know, you can't pay everybody equal. If somebody has more responsibility, or if somebody works better, a quality work, they work faster, they have more experience, then he has to be remunerated for that. And you know, I have a very interesting quote here of Abraham Lincoln. This I got in Liberty Square during our Liberty Square days. I saved everything that was passed out in Liberty Square there because many of them were very interesting. So here we have a quote of Lincoln in relation to this question of work and capital. Look, labor is prior to and independent of capital. Capital is only the fruit of labor and could never have existed if labor had not first existed. Labor is the superior of capital and deserves much the higher consideration. Okay, that's why in the trilogical enterprises, it's productivity, quality productivity that is given priority. Let's see number 3, continuing with the trilogical enterprise principles. Number 3, this is essential. Controlling individuals or groups from exerting power that may in any way impede the accomplishments of any productive member. This question of controlling people who want power. You know, it's not that when a person gets into power, they become crazy. It's already the imbalanced person who wants power. And we need to get better at recognizing that type of pathology in order to avoid it, to control it, so that those who work can do so. They can produce. Number 4, increasing productivity through awareness of errors feedback program. This we do in our trilogical companies. Once a week we have a feedback program. Now you need an environment of tolerance to be able to see the shortcomings of each person, to point them out so that they can be corrected. In this way, really the company develops. You know? Let's see number 5, the next one. As a result of these things, you'll get an increased understanding of the pathology of the socio-economic system controlled by the 1%. You know, with our trilogical companies, you have to realize that this is a part of the social revolution that is going on, to create our own companies in order to isolate those companies that are highly exploitative, those owned by the 1%. You know, what are we going to replace their companies with? We need to get working people. We need to form these trilogical enterprises that are a new, just way of doing our transactions for each other, not working for the 1%. Let's see the next one, number 6. Why strengthening a just self-owned, self-operated company strengthens yourself. This is going to be something wonderful when we begin to experience that the company that we work in is us. It's our company. The stronger that company gets, the better off we are, and not somebody else, not the 1%. This will be something marvelous. It's difficult to imagine democracy without capitalism. Imagine democracy with a just system of working, bringing ethics, honesty and spirituality into the workplace. This is the kind of civilization that we want. Let's see the next one, number 7. How to get started with little or no capital. The capitalists, they have us kind of brainwashed or thinking that you can't start a company without capital. But here, Lincoln shows us that what comes first? First, you have to start working. Capital comes from work. It's a little bit more easeful if you have some capital or a little bit of something to get started. But many people have this kind of megalomaniac idea that you need to have lots of money to get started because how can you get into the market if you don't have capital? You don't start from the top. You start from reality, where we are. And then this builds a strong company that is based on work and not on money. The money comes as a result. People who think only about the money, the capital, the money, this is already an unethical, dishonest person. We need to build companies with people who are interested in the work itself. Then the money comes as a result. If you would like to know more about the Trilogical Cooperative Company, you can go to this site, healingthroughconsciousness.com, and there's more information there about these companies. And in other programs, I'll be bringing you more about this. Okay? And I have a video clip of the author of these trilogical enterprises, who is the author also of the science that I use to analyze these questions. We call it analytical trilogy. Yeah, trilogy because it's science, philosophy, and spirituality. And I've taken a little excerpt from one of Dr. Keppe's television programs, and I've taken the liberty of dubbing it into English so that we can benefit from this. And he's talking about how to get back on the road to success. How to do that? It's a very interesting question. This guy has insights that are very helpful to us. So, is that ready? Can we roll the videotape of Dr. Keppe? Yes, okay, here we go. So, in the social economic field, let's see this slide that I've made for you.
These are the proposals from Dr.Keppe. First, end the interest rates that make everything more expensive and destroy production.
Look, if an individual can only produce something because he borrows money from a bank and pays exorbitantly for it, then he is not making profits for his own company. He's making money for the bank. So people who take out huge loans to buy a house, something like this, and later can't really afford to pay for all that, spend their entire lives as slaves to the social economic situation. The second one here is very important.
The appreciation of work, mainly quality work.
Here we have something interesting about the human being. It's not that he has to like first what he does, but rather he ends up liking what he does. Love for a work comes as a result of working. Then the dedication one has for that activity, especially if he increases that activity, improves it, and it becomes an activity of high quality, he will get enormous satisfaction from it. That is, repetition of what one does is what gives a person well-being. This is what gives him a satisfactory life. There was an empress in China who forced each of her cooks to make the same food every single day. Each one made exactly the same thing for years and years. So now the most important dishes that humanity has learned to do, has perfected, were created by this Chinese empress.
Now, it's obvious that a person who works as a teller in a bank all day long counting money evidently does not have a job that is going to bring her a lot of happiness in economic terms. When you talk about repeating and perfecting work, This is a work that has a good level and quality and goodness for society.
Unless he begins earning more. Let's see now number 3.
The elimination of speculation that destroys dignity.
Speculation is robbery, people. Wall Street is not a bank that has some value to it. Wall Street is a casino of shady, dishonest dealings. Of course, if an individual is dedicated to speculating, he is going to live his entire life robbing others while never producing anything of value for humanity. So what interest do we have in knowing that so-and-so now has 1 million and tomorrow 2 or 3 or 4? What a joke. And number 4, let's see.
Conscientize that capitalism is part of human pathology. Consciousness of human evil is the great path to sanity.
I'm not talking about capital. I'm talking about capitalism as such. We're talking about this way of life of putting in capital in the social economic system all hope for one's happiness. You see, it's been a terrible mistake we've made in putting our hopes and aspirations in the powerful, in capitalism, as though they're going to take care of our lives, instead of in our own work, what we do. Now, I have a very interesting demonstration of Occupy Wall Street that is called "It's Time to Turn the Tables" in relation to Bank of America. This is a very interesting demonstration, one of the many, many that we do. Can we roll that? Let's see this. It's time to turn the tables.
We need a home of our own. Bankers keep taking our homes, but we won't let them go. We need a home of our own. We gotta take back something we own. Okay. We need a home of our own. Bankers keep taking our homes, but we won't let them go. We need a home of our own.
This is awesome. Yeah, it's great. Yeah, so nice and cozy. Hey, no, it's like, just renting this place out.
You're renting a place out?
$230 million.
Because Bank of America took our home, so we thought we'd move in here.
Yeah, just $230 billion.
Hey! I love the new place. This is so awesome.
It's actually your place too.
Yeah, here I only have one left. In the middle of the bank, our house.
Today is the kickoff of a campaign called Fight Back. BAC is Bank of America's stock ticker. And the idea here is Bank of America is bankrupt. We have some pretty good evidence of that. For instance, the stock market doesn't believe that Bank of America is solvent. It trades at 40% of its book value.
Please don't take
So what we're doing is we're basically saying if we're constantly bailing out Bank of America with all these near 0% interest loans that are coming from the Fed, why don't we just take it over, break it into smaller banks, and unwind all of the dangerous derivative bets that they made, and save everyone the trouble of having to do another bailout that would be 10 times the size of Lehman's bailout.
Hit the road, banks, and don't you come back no more, no more, no more, no more. Hit the road, banks, and don't you come back no more. What you say?
Bank of America is the worst of the worst. They're too big to fail, but they're already failing, and they're relying on us to continue to bail them out. And so what we're saying today is they have to pay for their crimes, and we need to break them up.
Stealing all the time.
Today's action is actually also part of a week of action that's been happening all across the country focused on different big banks and their role in the housing crisis, in the foreclosure crisis. We really need to look at the systemic issues of the bank's involvement in creating the economic crisis that's made it so that people are not able to keep up with their mortgages. They got bailed out, but the people got sold out. We can't have banks that are too big to fail. If they're too big to fail, then they need to be broken up and put into receivership and start working for the American people.
Hit the road, banks! Don't you come back no more! What you say? Hit the road, banks! Don't you come back no more, no more, no more, no more! Hit the road, banks! And don't you come back no more! What you say? Hit the road! Oh, banks, you're so mean. You're the meanest institutions that I've ever seen. I guess if you say so, gonna have to pack your bags and go. That's right. Hit the road, banks. Don't you come back no more.
Mike check! Mike check! 75-year-old great-grandmother!
75-year-old great-grandmother!
Josephine Tolbert!
Josephine!
1975!
I'm here to inform you that you're obstructing pedestrian traffic and you are subject to arrest.
In wake of recent financial troubles!
In wake of recent financial troubles!
Josephine found herself!
Josephine found herself!
Forced temporarily out of her home!
Forced temporarily out of her home!
Rather than work with Josephine!
Rather than work with Josephine!
Bank of America!
Bank of America!
Sold her home!
Behind you. No, you can't leave now. You can stay. You can stay. Take it.
This isn't about the cops! This is about Bank of America! This is about Bank of America! Bank of America!
Downgrade! Downgrade BFA! Downgrade BFA! Downgrade BFA!
Now look, you know, the consciousness that the occupiers are bringing to the general public, the consciousness of these problems is something good. Okay, the problems are horrific. We need to deal with them. But consciousness of the problem is something good. And you know, the police department, they cannot attack the occupiers, the demonstrators. This is illegal. I want everyone to know that they cannot do that. I have a copy of me with the Constitution of the United States. And I would like to read to you from the first 10 amendments passed by Congress in 1789. This is the Article 1 of those amendments, okay? And this was ratified by the states in 1791. Now look clearly here. Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or of the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. Do you see? We have the constitutional right to assemble, peaceful assembly. Yeah, to redress these grievances that we have of the economically powerful people. It's a constitutional right. So the police attacking the demonstrators is anti-constitutional. It is against the law, aside from the fact that it's horrifically immoral. So the police department, you guys, you need to organize yourselves inside there. You don't need to obey orders that are anti-constitutional. Okay, so I want to encourage everyone to occupy. Take back what is yours that the 1% stole from you. Occupy. And see you again on Analyzing the 1%.
So we occupy.